Hello, and welcome to the Living Blind Blog Podcast.
No blind people were harmed in the filming of this podcast. Hey guys and dolls, I am here again, recording something to cook. Actually, we're going to go with the main course that most people love, and that's meat. I have some Tony Chachery, and since I am from New Orleans, I'm using a economy-sized bottle from Sam's. There's big, huge bottles, so I like a little spice in my food. So what we're going to do here is, and I also have a quote-unquote Fry Daddy. We're going to cook pork chops today. And because I'm so well-versed in flavoring, we're going to fill a bag, at least 2 cups of flour, which I have here, and I'm going to sprinkle a little bit, and I say a little bit, and that's kind of like a healthy half paw full, so to speak, of the Tony Chachery's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least counting and shaking, and the motion where just lightly sprinkle it. Make sure you use the side that has multiple holes. It helps you not oversalting food. So I sealed the bag back up, and I'm just shaking it ever so slightly, as you hear, to mix the flour in, the spices of the Tony Chachery and the flour. So when I decide to coat the pork chops, they will definitely have that coating of spices from the Tony Chachery and the pork chops. So they're little small pork chops. I mean, just like friendly sized. So and the Fry Daddy is pretty much warm to the touch. We definitely want that. So when we put them in, they will start cooking. But before that, and I have the basket for the Fry Daddy already out. So basically, when I start to cook them, hot grease, watch out, all that good stuff. Warning for the people who try this at home. Make sure if you have a Fry Daddy, it's deep enough to, you have a basket, you can just already do what I'm going to do. I'm going to code each pork chop by, and by the way, I'm using Ziploc bags that have the little zipper lock on them that you can slide back and forth. So I would take one little pork chop, open the bag, put it in, zip it back up, and shake so it would get nice and coated with the flour and the seasoning, but not too coated to where it's, it tastes too much. But that's okay, because usually when I take it out, I lightly kind of dust the flour off of the pork chop, so it's not too much. But you'll hear it sizzling when I put it down in like so. So while that's going, I will start on the other one. It's really kind of neat how everything just sizzles like that. It's comforting. It'll get a lot louder, but yeah, it's comforting to know that this to me is easier than chicken, because this is just one layer of meat, and you don't have to worry about much as far as getting it raw in between and all that good stuff. Because usually when something is frying that's coated with flour, it starts getting quiet when it's close to being done. So that's one in there. And I'm about to put the second one in. And I can understand you guys not wanting to try this at home or being slightly afraid. But don't be too afraid. Because, you know, you won't get very far in cooking if you stay afraid of things like this. That's the reason, actually, that I got the Fry Daddy for this, because it can, and I'm putting the lid on it so it's not too loud, it can actually prevent grease from popping on you. That's, you know, what the basket for putting it down into the Fry Daddies for. So those 2 pork chops are frying, and it's going to be a minute or so. So I guess conversing about the rest of what I'm going to do before I get to it, I'll take advantage of that while that's cooking. I have set aside a paper plate with 2 paper towels on them, so when I do get the pork chops out, I won't spill any grease on me, nor the area that I'm cooking on. See, it's gotten much louder because the flour's coated in with the cooking and all that good stuff. And yeah, I have a paper plate, or you can use a real plate, whichever one. Some people usually put the flour and the spices on a plate and do pork chops, batter them like that. But I prefer to do it in the bag because it has a lot less flour to, you know, mess up the place. Now, there is a certain point, and you will smell this when they have gotten to be ready to turn over. With average size pork chops, usually 3.5 to 5 minutes. But as you go, you'll be able to tell on your own. So I'm leaving it up to you. But yes, when these are done, I'll just be able to put them on the paper towels that I have in the plate to soak up the grease. As you hear, they are getting quieter, which means that they're ready to turn over. So I'm lifting the basket up and lightly, ever so lightly, flicking them over with 2 fingers. I mean, since it can be hot, and you definitely want to be careful. So that's done, and while that's cooking on the other side, since there were 3 that I got out, I usually pre-wrap the pork chops when I get them, or pre-put them in little bags, like other little Ziploc bags, other kinds of Ziploc bags, so they're smaller than the one that I'm using. Now, as I code the 3rd one, I'm definitely keeping an ear open, so when they're done, I can just put them out and pop this next one in. You guys doing okay? Not scared that I'm gonna get burned, are you? I've been doing stuff like this far too long to get burned. And you know, being careful is a good thing. Some people do them in the skillet. I tried that once, and I've learned you don't do that for breakfast. You make sure you have your jammies on. So it's getting quiet again. So I'm going to slowly lift up the basket halfway out and just lightly touch and see if they're okay. They need a little bit more time. So I guess if this was a live show, I'd start talking about sports, which I have no idea. I am just enjoying my little glass of wine and cooking. And I figure I can't drink and drive, so drinking and cooking is next on the list. Anyway. When you also hear a light hiss, I don't know if you guys can hear this, but it's like, yeah, when you hear that, usually one side is done, but in my cautiousness, not to have one side raw, I double check the other side just in case, because I would not want any areas that were not touched by the grease, to have a flour center, so to speak. And yes, I do use a spatula when I'm cooking with the Fry Daddy if there's not enough grease or I don't feel that it's covered the whole thing. That's the thing with cooking. Persistence and learning from your, well, they're not mistakes. They're delightful advances. At least that's what I call them. So, let's see. This first one, I think is done. And I pulled it up with the spatula, and I'm lightly touching it. It's nicely coated. So, the second one I put in a few seconds later actually. So I'm going to give it a little bit more time. For it to cook. While the other one is soaking in the plate, soaking up the grease. And of course, yes. For a special situation, I do plan on doing my spaghetti from scratch, podcast-wise, for you guys on the Living Blind blog. See, they get silent, just like people, except without cooking people. So I'm using the spatula to get the second one out. See, lightly touching it because the grease can hurt if you're not careful, but definitely be careful. Okay, there's one spot that I definitely want cooked, for sure. So, while I give that a few seconds, I'm going to take this other little pork chop that I had out of the bag that was sitting there coating. Now, you don't want to leave them in the bag because the moisture from the pork chops will soak into the flour, or the pork chop will be soaked into the flour, and you definitely don't want that. So, raising the basket up, let that one sit there, put the basket back down, and voila, third and final one. Usually, if I know I'm going to deep fry something, or I need coating for something, which I made with the flour and putting the 20 centuries in it, I'll let it sit in the refrigerator for a few days. More than a week is too much. You don't want to let this sit there, unless you plan on freezing it, which is interesting to see frozen flour. So, yeah. since that one was quite thin, I'll be more cautious with it. I'll keep an ear on it. And while that is going on, I'll clean up what possibly may be flour left behind. Just in case. A good cook or chef or whatever you want to call yourself. But a good person who does cook near the end of a project does clean up. So, I have a little sponge that I lightly wet just in case the flour got some places that I don't know about. And if you have a sighted counterpart who can help you with this, that'd be great. But luckily I know where I've moved. Living alone sometimes can be a pain when sighted counterparts come in and say, oh, there's white stuff all over the place. Have you been doing drugs? No, usually they say that, well, what's this white stuff? Forgetting that, I can cook. And quickly I explain, okay, it's flour, don't freak out or don't try to get in that. And then offer them what I've cooked, usually. So, I will flip this one over. And by the way, the other ones have calmly ceased sizzling. And I'm so tempted to take a piece. I just take a little piece. Nobody, you won't tell, right? Yeah, you won't tell. You ain't me. What? A chef is supposed to taste what they eat. Relax. Okay. I'll just take one more small. No, I have to focus on what I'm doing. It is very tempting when you cook for yourself to eat it all because, if somebody else cooked it, I know you're laughing at me. If somebody else cooked it, you can stay away from it. But when you do it yourself, it's very hard to stay away from it. Okay. So, you hear that this has gotten silent again. I'll pull the basket halfway out. Lightly touch it and check it. There's one little spot that needs to get cooked in. And sometimes you have to push the spatula lightly down on it because the meat can curl up while you're cooking. I didn't think this would actually be fun. I don't know. I mean, I know it's not the wine talking, but it is actually fun cooking with a spontaneous audience. A friend of mine. Okay, I swear I'm not going to eat anymore. A friend of mine, Robert Kingett, is supposed to come in June. But I won't make you guys wait that long to enjoy the podcast when I cook the spaghetti from scratch. Oh my God, here's a little pig. He ate 4 huge plates. It tickled me so much. It's like, is there any more? Is there any more? So I plan on making him a huge pot of my spaghetti and just letting him have it. Okay. So that beep that you heard was me turning the fried Eddie off. I'm extracting this last piece because it is done. And lightly picking it up and flick it onto the plate. Now, I'll let that piece dry. Put the spatula in the sink. those dishes a little later. Fry Daddy lid back on. Unplug it. And while that's cooling, I just kind of sort of finished eating the one that I had originally started taste testing. So, as far as that batter you heard me make earlier, that also goes with chicken and anything you want to do deep fried except beignets. We don't want to add spices to beignets. You do that with jelly. And yes, that will be another podcast that's on the list. God, that's good. I can't stay away from my own cooking. Okay, you guys. Thanks for listening to this. Enjoy your day. Try a new recipe. Even if it's just grilled cheese, which is also another podcast I'm going to do. And this has been Seanisy for the Living Blind Blog Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, my Twitter name is Seanisy, Seanisy, or Sean Hasbury, which will come up when you add me. So, also, if you'd like to get in touch with me, my email address is sean.hasbury@me.com. That's SEAN period HASBERRY @me.com. Once more. That's Sean Hasbury, SEAN period HASBERRY @me.com. Oh, excuse me.